Have you found yourself in a situation where you are the loved one of a person who passed away, and it seems like the estate is being handled and no one is telling you anything? Do you wonder what are your rights as a beneficiary? I'm attorney Bernita Williams. I practice here in South Florida, and I meet a lot of families where a lot of estates are being handled, especially at the beginning. And some of the people who think that they are beneficiaries believe they're not being told what's going on. People come to my office and they say, oh, my sister, my brother, my cousin, my uncle, my aunt, whomever just took charge. They started filing papers. Nobody told me anything. Well, sometimes that's true and sometimes that's not true. Sometimes people receive paperwork, but they don't really understand what it is. So I did this brief video to tell you at least 10 of your rights as a beneficiary. But before I do that, first, before you exercise your rights as a beneficiary, you must establish whether or not you are a beneficiary. Just because you are the son or daughter of a person who passed away does not necessarily mean you are a beneficiary. You do know your parents can write a will and not include you as a beneficiary. So the first step is that you need to determine whether you are a beneficiary. After you determine whether or not you are a beneficiary, then of course you can exercise your rights. I'm going to tell you 10 rights that you have as a beneficiary. The first right I want to tell you about is you have a right to ask the court to determine heirs. Now, you might not know whether or not you are a beneficiary. You may not know whether there is a will. If you think you are a beneficiary, you have a right to file a petition to determine heirs through an attorney and have the court to decide whether you are an heir. The second thing is you have a right to receive notice of court proceedings. They can't just do things and don't involve you if you are truly a beneficiary. So that's the second right. The third right is you have a right to receive an accounting. When an estate is being handled, sometimes properties are purchased, sometimes properties are sold, many times bills of the deceased person are being paid. You have a right to an accounting that tells you exactly what is in the estate, what is being sold, what is sold for. And the fourth right that you have is a right to fair and prompt administration. Now, when I say fair and prompt, you may be thinking, well, goodness, fair and prompt administration means all of this stuff needs to be done in 90 days. That's very, very unrealistic. Even when an estate is being administered properly and things are going well, it's not uncommon for estate administration to last a year or two. So fair and prompt is, sometimes people think fair and prompt should mean, goodness, in 6 months we ought to be done. Well, that's not realistic. So fair and prompt might mean a year to 2 years to finish up everything. The fifth right that you have is a right to determine your interest. Just how much is owed to you? What are you entitled to? Is it 50%? Is it 10%? Is it 5%? It just depends upon what's in the last will and testament. And if there is no will, it depends upon your state statutes. But you have a right to know the percentage that you are entitled to. The sixth right is you have a right to petition for the removal of a personal representative. Let's say the estate was open, a certain person was appointed personal representative, and you don't think they are managing the estate properly. You have a right to petition that they be removed. Now, removal of a personal representative is not that easy. Once a person is appointed to be personal representative, then they have to do a lot of things wrong for the court to say this person needs to be removed. So when you're thinking of trying to get somebody removed, you need to refer to the state statutes to see what are the grounds for removal. The seventh right is the right to object to a proposed plan. Let's say the personal representative says, I'm the personal representative and my plan is to sell off 3 of the 5 properties. Well, if you don't agree with that, you have a right to object to that. These are court proceedings, of course, when you object, but you do have a right to object to the plans of the executors and the personal representative. The eighth right I want to mention is a right to object to creditor claims. When you probate an estate and you do estate administration, handling the estate's affairs, there may be creditors, and the personal representative may propose to pay a particular creditor when maybe you don't think they should be paid. Maybe you don't think it's a legitimate creditor. Maybe some creditor filed and said, well, the deceased person owes me $20,000, and maybe you don't think that's legitimate. So you have a right to object to a particular creditor being paid. The ninth right I would like to point out to you is you have a right to challenge the validity of a marriage after your loved one died. I've handled cases where people challenged the validity of a marriage because the person who passed away married while they were in hospice. They had cancer, they were in hospice care, and somebody came and actually performed a wedding ceremony in hospice. So the relatives were like, this is not a legitimate spouse who's trying to get all of these things from the estate. You have a right to challenge the validity of what they call a deathbed marriage. The 10th right I'd like to point out to you is you have a right to enter a contract with other interested parties who are getting something either through the will or through the probate court of a case of a person who didn't have a will. For instance, if you're getting 10% and somebody else is getting 10%, and you say to yourself, well, I have plenty, I don't really need this 10%, I'm going to agree to give my 10% to another beneficiary who's getting 10%. You have a right to do that. So there are a lot of rights, but the main one that I pointed out earlier in this video is you have a right to receive notice of what's going on if you are a beneficiary. So if someone has passed away and you're a beneficiary, or you think you are or should be, there are plenty of statutes and probate rules in the state of Florida that guarantee that you have a right to do certain things. If you would like to talk more about this and what your rights are as a beneficiary, please call me at 786-831-9483. That is 786-831-9483. Also, you can visit me at my website, vcwlaw.com. That is vcwlaw.com for more information. Thank you so much for listening.